Hello, Lou Hamilton from Audible Elegance here in Cincinnati, Ohio. What I thought I would do tonight is what I would call the preamble to home theater. And the reason I call it a preamble is because I don't have the full setup yet that I'm going to do. We're working on the plans and working and coordinating with a couple of manufacturers as to exactly how we're going to unfold this. But I can start giving you some basic primer elements. And my little friend here, the moon, from Raven and the Box of Knowledge, is going to be a great help. In a lot of movies, and of course the bigger you make the screen, the more apparent it becomes, movies are not done as a monologue with somebody in the center. You actually usually have characters to the right or left. You may have a conversation between somebody who's on one side talking to somebody on the other. So the steering logic of a home theater system has to accomplish, by audio, pulling your attention span away to be coordinated with the off-center images that you're seeing. The way you can understand this to yourself is to simply unplug your center channel. Now, the reason I want you to unplug the center channel is because your processor is still thinking it's sending the center channel information to it when in fact it's not playing, and it's sending the steering logic information to the right and left speaker. And what you'll discover is that you'll actually hear maybe 10 or 15 dB down, sometimes less, human voices or whatnot, events, things crashing, whatever, actually coming out of the right or left speaker. But it's not anywhere near the volume of the center. And that's because it's used to steer you, not to draw you. And there's a difference. Now, what a lot of people should do if they want to start understanding home theater at a perfect level is to take the time to go down before the movie starts, please. Otherwise, you'll go nuts or get sick. Is to go down to the front row of a movie theater and actually look at their screen. And what you'll see is that their screen has holes in it that you could easily drive toothpicks through. And the reason being is that their speakers, left, center, and right, are positioned pretty much in the center of the screen in the positions to provide that steering logic. So the wider the screen, well, they're spacing out, and they may actually have double ups. I've seen that. And but it's centered to the screen. Now, I'm calling this a primer because I would say about 75% of the home theaters that I get to see that have been done leave much to be desired. And that's because they'll do some things that are rather absurd. The worst absurdity is the placement of speakers in the ceiling pointing down. And there's two real problems with that. Number one is that if the audio image or the video image is here, but the audio image is up here, you have a tear of your senses. It's kind of like talking to somebody, but the sound coming from their shoes. It doesn't make any sense. Well, in a movie, it doesn't make any sense to have it up there. The other problem is that, and I don't care, you can go to the speakers that point out. So, we're going to try to address the second issue, which is once you cross about 10,000 cycles in most tweeters, its dispersion radius is about the diameter of this flashlight. It's very limited. It's not nearly as wide. So you begin to lose some of the overtones and everything else. Now, if you happen to party a lot and like to get drunk and lay down on the floor looking up at the movie, it probably sounds pretty good. But otherwise, it's about the worst possible scenario. The second one that follows quickly behind it is where they have maybe a large screen television that is sitting on a stand, and then the speakers are placed in the cabinet underneath of it. Now we have the opposite tear where everything sonically is happening down here. And again, you create the same sort of tear and problem, but really is not centering up to the screen at all. Now, some people have to do this because they have children and they love their children very much and they don't want the children to ruin their product. And of course, they don't want to be angry at their children because children do what children do. I understand that. That's perfectly acceptable from that angle. You're compromising for family. I get it. That's good. I've had kids. I sold my audio system because they like rocking the speakers. And when you see quad ESLs banging around like this, you just kind of go, is my children more important or my audio? Well, the audio left. Now, from there, you get into various combinations of problems from the front three channels. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight in this primer. And that is where you don't have necessarily a good relationship to the screen. Let's say you have the speakers positioned right and left at a proper position relative to the screen center, but then you wind up driving the center channel either to the top or underneath. So you either wind up with a smile or you wind up with a frown. And the more you can get the center channel in relation to the center, the better off you're going to be. This may involve even playing around with the positions and the anglings. It's not a complete cure to it because it'll never match being behind the screen, which happens in a real theater. And you got to keep in mind that the information you receive on a streaming or on a Blu-ray or on a DVD is exactly the same movie soundtrack that they recorded for the theaters, which have the speakers behind the screen. Also, the same is true for their equalization, which is why some movies, when you're in an empty movie theater or at home, the top frequencies can be a little intrusive, a little harsh to hear, agonizing in some cases. And because it's equalized for speakers behind the screen, they don't change it for you at home. They save the money, make the same, they save the money in production and they make the same amount of money selling the disc. So why go through the effort of production from a monetary standpoint? So these are the reasons that you try to get at least the center channel as close to the bottom surface or the top surface of the screen you're using, to try to get it as close as possible to complete the steering logic so you don't have this. So a center channel up here, well then we have this going on. And of course the center channel, very close to the floor, well you have the exact opposite thing going on. So that's a kind of a basic starting primer for it. It's also one of the reasons, and I had the pleasure of having the regional Martin Logan rep here today, as to why I like Martin Logan speakers, because at least I start getting the height up. I actually have asked them today to produce a series more for the home theater because people are moving away from screens because they want to have a lit room, and they can now get a 90-inch or 95-inch panel where before, you either had a 35-inch television set or you had a 90-inch screen. Well, we now have the 90-inch screens and in flat panels, so let's have the architecture, set for that. Now, while putting conventional bookshelf designs, flanking the screen to the right and left can be very effective, there are some disadvantages to that, and we'll start discussing that in a later video, because we'll start talking about room acoustics and how it relates to home theater. We're certainly going to get into Dolby Atmos, which I think was a brilliant step forward for the average consumer. We were designing systems that were capable of many of the characteristics desired from Atmos without a dedicated soundtrack, but it was costly. So they actually made the filling of the room and the environment far more affordable, and I applaud them for it. I'm glad they addressed that issue because not everybody can afford that. Of course, some people can't afford to have speakers in the ceiling around the couch area. They may not even have a ceiling around the couch area, so we understand that as well. So there we are. That's the basic primer. It's something for you guys to think about for the home theater people. And we do home theater. I've spoken at CES 6 times on home theater. I've spoken numerous times with Thomas and Holman and other people in the industry in this. And it's always insightful and delightful to talk to them about it. But unfortunately, I see a lot of misguided efforts in home theater. And you know, the purpose of watching a movie is allowing yourself to be taken on a ride, and experience exactly what the director wanted you to feel. And that's accomplished by both video and audio. So there we are. Thank you.